Welcome back to Natural 2, our D&D and tabletop role-playing unscripted podcast. Today is episode 20, or Nat 20 of our show, and hopefully we have a nice little insightful bit of conversation to throw your way. This video, ultimately, if it has been sent to you by someone else, is supposed to be perhaps the most condensed and worthwhile advice for new players coming into D&D. So, James, why don't you go ahead and kick us into what new players should be mulling over?
All right, we're going to keep it concise here, keep it tight. The first point is that D&D is not like Stranger Things or Critical Role or the D&D memes subreddit. And I think that that's pretty self-explanatory, but suffice to say that, especially in terms of something like Critical Role, you don't watch people play pro StarCraft at an esports tournament and then expect that that's how you're going to play StarCraft. It's a different beast altogether. And that's not a perfect analogy, but it's the best one that comes to my mind. There are similarities. So there are people who play similarly to the Critical Role folks, but your table is going to be different. Every
Mm-hmm.
table is different. So this is not to say lower your expectations, but manage your expectations.
Mm-hmm. I think where this actual topic comes into like problem area is when a player is coming to the table kind of almost like enforcing their own expectations on others. And I think most often you actually realistically see this with the whole like r/D&D memes thing, where someone sees some meme about a broken build and they're like, oh yeah, I'll take this and I'll slap it in my DM's game. And it's like, no, like coming in with some triple stack kobold artificer that, is like fucking multi-class into 7 different things. Like, no, that's not what D&D is supposed to be, or that's probably not what your DM is expecting you to bring. So that is usually where I see a lot of actual friction. So if you are coming into the game with things like that, perhaps try and reel that back ever so slightly. But the next thing that is absolutely essential for new players is, and I explain this to, I guess, older people more often than not, but it applies to a lot of different people. D&D is not a adversarial sport, and there isn't exactly a loser in D&D. The advice that's given out a lot is like, the DM is not your enemy, and that is very true. But I think new players don't really understand that the DM is not just not your enemy. The DM is actually on your team and on your side. They are trying to have just as much fun as you, and they're also trying to amplify the fun that you are having. And so if you ever find yourself in a position of like, oh, he's just trying to steer us into this, or he's, putting all these roadblocks in our way just because I mentioned, it's probably not the case. And if it is the case, then there is a deeper problem there.
I think that it's better to think about it like a director and the players are the cast. The cast isn't there to embarrass the director. The director is not there to kill the cast members' characters. Uh, it's about putting on a private show just for you, 3, 4, 5, however many people are in your group. And I do think that players should want to be successful. I think that they should want their characters to be effective. I mean, it is a game with mechanics, and it goes down a weird road, in my opinion, for a player to not care what happens to his character or to think that it's funny for her character to be in distress every time over and over, but that might be a topic for another video. Suffice to say, I think that it's good to want to be effective as a player, and as a DM, what it means to be effective as a DM is a little different, because you don't want to beat the players so much as you want to lose in interesting ways. If you as the DM are losing in interesting ways, then you are winning. Makes total sense, right? Freedom and making choices is a core concept of the game. understand your options, think about your options, explore your options. This the world is as infinite as your collective imaginations. So you can stray off the path. You can stay in that town even though the quest you were doing is finished. You can always try whatever comes to mind. Some things will work, some things won't, but it's there for you to explore even more easily than in reality. If you want to go somewhere, you go there.
I think the when I hear that advice, the first thing that comes to my head is like, oh, so you want me to just be chaotic and run around everywhere and like stomp all over the DM's plans and stuff. And I don't think that is actually the advice that's being given, because what it usually turns into, or what it looks like at the end result, is you expressing to your DM what you want to do, and that can either be in an in-character manner or a kind of meta out-of-character way. Like once the session ends, maybe the DM was expecting you to leave the town or go on a certain plot hook or whatever. You can, once the session ends, go, hey, next week, let's actually stay here because I want to investigate this more. I really want to dive into that and really figure out what that is, which is a much healthier way of like keeping your freedom and your agency without stomping all over the DM's prep work and kicking their sandcastles over and all that kind of stuff. But it is like something that I've never experienced, not knowing that D&D is all about choice, because that was like the main thing that appealed to me about D&D is like everything is open and everything is an option. There's no dialogue tree. Like it is as big and as wide as you can actually imagine. So that's just like, I don't know, nerding out about D&D now. So
Well, we are in a YouTube video about D&D. So it would be weird if you didn't.
that is true. But on the topic of nerding out, another essential piece of advice is you should be the biggest nerd about your character, whether that is their backstory or their personality or their mechanics or their actual spells or abilities. You should almost be teaching the DM things about your character versus the DM having absolutely everything, in his collected consciousness about like, oh yeah, this person has this advantage on this thing, and this person mentioned this thing, and oh yeah, I forgot he has a magical item activated. Like, if you let that all fall upon the DM, where he's constantly having to handhold new players to effectively use their character, there is going to be so much lost opportunity. There's going to be a lot of times where you don't get some advantage that you should have, or you kind of slide past a rule that you should have actually probably considered. So just being aware, reading through like whatever class you play, reading the whole section of the player's handbook, it goes a long way and it's not a ton of effort. So I would just say, if you're not caught up on your character, make that a priority.
It's the dungeon master's job to know how the universe works, and you are your character master, and you need to know how your character works.
Mhm.
And you don't have to have it all memorized, but put in that time, put in that effort. And something I'm going to add too is that it doesn't stop when the session starts. Bring, if you have a player's handbook or if you have the book that your class came out of, bring it with you to the game. You can refresh your memory while you're waiting for your next turn to come up. And another part of knowing your character is knowing what you're going to do before your turn starts. What I always try to do and what I love to see in others is when their turn comes up, they're like, all right, this is what I'm doing. I'm moving over here. I'm going to smite. And then with my bonus action, I'm going to do this. And then roll the dice and roll the d20 and the damage dice at the same time. Uh, just on top of it. Don't don't try not to be that person who it comes around. Okay, it's your turn. Oh, let's see. I was playing Angry Birds. Now, that guy, is that the guy that you hit on your turn? Is he damaged? That's not the guy.
Mhm.
Is it? Are you? How many hit points do you have? Don't do that. Don't do it. Our next point, and hand in hand with what we were just talking about, uh, try not to make the same mistake twice. Nobody's perfect, everybody makes mistakes. But when you identify something that is a sticking point or that's slowing the game down or that is just causing a problem, you can address it. Be proactive. That what I was just talking about is a great example. If combat is slow, you have some fraction of the power to speed it up. Or if you forget how a particular mechanic works and it comes up all the time, write it on a card for yourself or something. You know, it doesn't have to continue just being a problem in perpetuity.
Yeah, the thing that you mentioned there is like the best example of how this actually shows up in play, where a character uses a spell like every other session, and every time they use it, they have to look it up. They have to get some clarification, they have to reread it, they forget that they need some certain component for it, or that it's a ritual and not an action, and it's like, if you're gonna use something again and again and again, if it's a core part of your interaction with the game, you should know it. And if you ever bring it up and don't know it, you should mark down that outside the game, or even while you're not a proactive part of the scene, you should take the time to really hammer that into your head so that the game can flow better. Because everyone's goal at the end of the day should be improving the game for everyone else to enjoy it as much as humanly possible. So, yeah, that can be applied very broadly to the game, but just try to, I don't know, constantly be improving. The next point, which I honestly sometimes question how prevalent this is, but RPG horror stories are so, like interesting, or kind of catches everyone's attention, that I think it is like shown to be a bigger problem. But don't bring a character that is inherently like antagonistic to the other characters or the party. Like, don't bring someone who's a kleptomaniac and is going to constantly be stealing everyone's shit. Don't bring somebody that is so firm in their beliefs that anyone who strays from their righteous path is going to get smited down with a bloody fury. You know that you're coming into a group game, and there is a certain amount of meta knowledge that you are able to use, or that is acceptable to use, that you should bring a character that is going to play in a group. And I know that sounds like the simplest advice in the world, but apparently there are people who just cannot connect those two dots. So as long as that is at some point a question in your brain of, is my character going to play well with others, then you're probably on the right track already.
You want the group to succeed. And there again, D&D is not an adversarial game. You're not going to beat anybody else at the table. So doing things that would get you thrown out of the group if you were actually doing them in real life are things to consider, whether or not you should do them in character in the game. So stealing from your party members, or doing things that get them hurt during combat encounters, or cutting the rope that they're trying to climb and then they fall 40 feet because you think it's funny. Who knows? Don't do it. And I want to add here, this was not a point that I thought of before we started recording, but it has come to me since we're discussing new players. This is the best place to fit it in. Bring an original character. Don't bring you're not going to literally play Harry Potter or Aragorn. You're not going to do it. It's okay to take some flavor from characters that you like, but it should be your own character, and not just that character, but with a different name either, because we know what you're doing.
I think one of the little caveat I'll slip in there is you can go off the other deep end on that topic of like trying to bring something so original and so unique and so stand out that it is just like doesn't work, like it fundamentally doesn't work. So while you shouldn't bring a carbon copy of something, you also don't have to reinvent some non-existent wheel to try and prove a point, there's a very nice middle ground to be hit and a lot of variation in that middle ground.
I have seen it at least once where people have approached D&D like it was Soul Calibur or something, and it was just all of these characters from all of these different franchises and universes have been pulled into this game, and we're just gonna be in the same group for some reason. But moving on anyway. Some things are best discussed after the game. That's our next point. Uh, it's fine to clarify things. It's fine to have some back and forth or to ask questions. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to get clarification or to stick up for yourself if you feel like you were ripped off, shortchanged. That's all right. But remember that one of the many roles of the DM is referee, and it doesn't pay to drag the game to a halt, arguing with the referee, um, or to air dirty laundry with the whole group that you don't really need to. So that's more about a kind of social awareness, I guess. You know, just ask yourself, maybe I should just go to this person after the session wraps tonight, and we can talk about it without holding everybody else up.
Yeah, I think it's honestly incredibly rare that there is some moment in a game that if you don't get an absolute finite ruling on, everything is going to be completely different, right? Like, more often than not, some sort of rule discrepancy or some sort of missed point or a kind of like, glossed over moment is not going to entirely shift the narrative beyond repair. Usually people's D&D games are not that like intensely restrictive. And so more often than not, you can wait to the end of the game and be like, hey, I think I missed a little bit of damage there, and maybe we would have taken them out a little bit quicker, but we won, so like it's totally fine, but maybe we should try and keep track of that a bit better next time. Like, that's a very realistic and healthy approach for this. If you ever find yourself getting like genuinely heated when discussing something in the game, that is a huge red flag of like, this should probably stop and wait till later, not only for the game's sake, but also for everybody involved. There's no reason to kind of like lock yourself into, give me an answer, I'm gonna X, Y, or Z, when you can, take your time, let cooler heads prevail. So, yeah, more often than not, leave it for the end of the game. So, our next point, which again, I really hope isn't as prevalent as the internet makes it out to be, but the, I guess, process of having another player, or maybe even the DM in this case, doing something that you're uncomfortable with and then not voicing that, I guess, discomfort or displeasure, you should feel open, if you are in a decent group or at least a group with good communication, to voice like, hey, when we got to this thing, I really didn't like it. Can we please not include that? Or even if it is something that really like gets to you more aggressively, you can put the game on pause and be like, all right, now this is too far for me. Can we please like readjust or reset? A lot of, internet discussion centers around like we can have like X cards or safe words or things like that. I know the other side's argument is like, you're just trying to be a bunch of pansies. But, if someone's uncomfortable with something and they're not having fun, then you are failing to have a fun D&D game, which is hopefully everybody's goal. So feel very, very comfortable discussing things with your group, because people can't read your mind. A lot of people operate under that assumption sometimes, and that can cause a lot of miscommunication and hurt feelings, and even cause the group to kind of splinter and fall apart. So, yeah, find something strange that you want to voice it.
And I don't want to throw any shade on groups that do use X cards or what have you. I think that's just fine if that works for people. But you don't have to have the card in order to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a problem, it's okay to stand up for yourself and protect your well-being. So you don't have to have the card. Don't wait to be asked. If something is a problem, say so. And if the DM or anybody else in the group gives you a hard time for that, then there are so many ways to join so many groups now. There's never been a better time to be a new player to D&D. There's maybe never been a better time to play D&D at all, ever. It's a D&D golden age. So don't worry about ditching that group if that's what
Mhm.
it comes to.
I think the saying of uh, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, bad D&D is better than no D&D," but that is not the case. Bad D&D is much worse than no D&D.
And it's not that hard to find good D&D.
Or at least like acceptable D&D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lastly, or I think lastly, who knows? We play it fast and loose around here.
We would never go off on a tangent. Who do you think we are?
You don't have to buy anything to get started. You don't have to spend a dime if you really don't want to. Don't be afraid because there's all these books and the books cost $30 or some of them cost $50 and people have whole shelves full of books and people have a whole bag with 10 different sets of dice. Uh don't don't be daunted by that. That's just, you know, people indulging their collector lust, collection lust. It You don't have to have anything. The basic rules are available for free to download. You don't even have to have dice as long as you have a way to generate random numbers. I don't recommend that, but if for some reason I just don't know if it's for me, I don't want to spend any money, you don't have to.
Mm.
There's a low barrier to entry no matter what you may have seen or heard.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing online D&D, D&D Beyond is free, Roll20 is free, you know, the rules you can get for free, Discord is free. I mean, I guess you have to own a computer, but I mean, we're getting really stretched there. But if you're
Splitting
talking about
hairs.
even, yeah, in person, again, you don't need anything really that specific. Like, yeah, you probably could still use some digital tools like a dice roller if you don't own dice, but honestly, I imagine most people can scrounge together even like a rudimentary set of dice. And then you don't need like miniatures in these like dwarven forged terrains. Like, you can honestly use paper and pencil, or you could use a battle map or a whiteboard or whatever you have. People have played D&D with practically nothing, and people will continue playing D&D with practically nothing. So don't have this fear, this expectation, and I imagine this mostly comes from watching things like Critical Role or Dimension 20 and things of that nature of like, oh my god, like this is such an event and such a performance, and like I don't have elf ears and I don't have fake leaves to put in my hair. It's like, no, like you've lost the plot at that point. Bring it back to basics and just enjoy what D&D has to offer.
I can't believe it. I forgot one of the simplest points. Somebody at that table will be thrilled to give you a set of dice to play with.
Hmm.
Somebody like me who has a collection of dice, yes, please use this spare set. Validate my purchase decision.
Yeah, no, like I've bought like 40 bags of dice because I know 40 separate people are going to ask me to borrow dice. That's 100% the reality of the situation.
Well, you've got shirts in different colors. You gotta have dice in different colors. You don't
uh,
wear the same pair of underwear every day.
I
Come
also
on.
do put my dice through the wash every week, so that is an accurate analogy.
I've never cleaned my dice. Maybe I should. Hmm.
Do a whole video on dice hygiene. We're really
Go,
going on a
no,
tangent.
man. I'm gonna go on Etsy. I'm gonna go on Etsy with a dice washer
Get one
that
of those
I
little like
designed.
brushes, do an ASMR video.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the point at the end of all this is you don't need a dice brush or a whole goblin horde of miniatures and equipment. D&D is very accessible.
They play D&D in prison with handmade toys, spinners, paper spinners to randomize their numbers. For goodness sake, I mean those poor people.
This is my last off-topic thing before I bring us to an end, but I bet you there are some kick-ass prison D&D games that are way better than like some of these real world like super high production D&D games. That'd be an interesting thing to try and compare.
At the very least, they could play like 4 times a week if they want
Yeah.
to.
They get like 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Anyway, to cease our rambling and actually bring this video to some sort of conclusion, that is, at least in our opinion, some of the most important things to express to new players coming into D&D to help give them a healthier mindset while indulging in this hobby of ours. If you have a new player in your group, or if you know a new player, or if you know someone interested in D&D, feel free to send them this video. And if you are someone who has sent this video and has made it to the end, hopefully you have gathered some knowledge or gotten some advice that will help you be a better player in the future.
Joyce, next time we get together like this at least once a week, at least that we record. So I hope you will catch us on the next one.
Feel free to like or comment or subscribe to your will. To your will, that's not how you say that. But I always enjoy discourse down below, so if there are other things that you think new players should know, feel free to put in the comments below, and we will hopefully try and bump those up or pin them so that they can be spread across the wealth of our community. I'm getting way too wordy with this outro. You gotta end us, James.
Yeah, these people might be the first time they've ever seen us, they've ever watched us. First impressions, man. That's all for now. I've got plenty more jokes to make. He does too, but we'll make them in another video that you can come watch. So until next time.
Have a good one.